Hello folks, Darren McGarvey here, making a quick comment regarding Douglas Ross forgetting to declare £30,000 of earnings to the Scottish Parliament. For anyone unaware of the wider context here, it is arising from the blowback from the Owen Paterson lobbying scandal, where the British government attempted to move the goalposts and change the rules because they had a convenient aversion to those rules being applied to them. And this was done not just out of loyalty to Owen Paterson, but out of naked self-interest, because many of them are implicated in the same culture of soft touch rules and perverse incentives which arise when lawmakers decide that the rules are a bit different for them than they are for everybody else. So in light of what Douglas Ross has voluntarily brought to the attention of the Standards Committee at the Parliament, he forgot to say that £30,000 of additional income from other jobs, ironically as a referee, big red card for Douglas Ross. And the reason that I say that is because we have to examine what the culture here that arises where someone can forget to declare £30,000. So how can somebody forget the rules? They forget the rules when the rules are not very rigorously applied, right? So this is what we're talking about here. When people say the Douglas Ross issue is not related to sleaze because it doesn't involve lobbying, no. But this sort of stuff arises from a particular culture where the rules aren't heavily applied, the penalties aren't great for breaking the rules, and ultimately this leads to an accountability gap between poorer sections of the population, which as a result of breaking rules can have benefits sanctioned, removed, they can be coerced, they can be detained, they can be deported. But when people of a higher social class, like the political class for example, break the rules, then not only do they get the opportunity to refer themselves to become subject to those rules, but then we're all scrambling to understand the very rich context in which this rule breaking occurred. Let me tell you something, as someone who has been subject to rules. See, when I went to the benefits office to explain to them that I missed my meeting because somebody in my family went missing, I got sanctioned. Right, 6 weeks. See when I misbehaved online many years ago as a result of an alcoholic relapse and a mental breakdown, and I threatened someone online, I ended up in court. The judge didn't want to understand what the context was. The context was there was a law there and I broke it. So I got my community service and I went and did it willingly. So this is the really upsetting aspect of this for many people, and the aspect of it that I think is not included or accounted for in the debate. We're talking here about a government which heavily comes down on vulnerable sections of the population for breaking rules or even being suspected of breaking rules, but then talks about the cruel world of politics when those same rules are applied to them. So these are people whose spirits are so fucking brittle that they need parliamentary conventions around how people can talk to each other in case they get offended by somebody calling them scum, in case they get offended by somebody calling them a liar, even when they are a liar. So we're constantly in Parliament referring to one another as the Right Honourable this and the Right Honourable that, constantly reinforcing this idea of the essential virtue of being in public office, while many are leveraging that very public office to either enrich themselves or to wriggle out or try and explain away why rules are being clearly broken. That is the issue here. That is the point. Don't get sidetracked by the whataboutery. I've got loads and loads of Tories in my timeline who are all saying, now talk about Ian Blackford, now talk about Angus Robertson. That sort of criticism doesn't wash with me, because I am one of the most critical people of the Scottish Government in the Scottish media. I'm one of the most critical campaigners of the Scottish Government operating in the country. And so when I criticise the Scottish Government, or when I demand that Joe Fitzpatrick resign as a result of the drug death crisis, or I go hard on the educational attainment gap, those criticisms actually register far more fiercely than the usual suspects on the right and Tories, whose whole agenda is really just to bombard the Scottish Government with criticism after criticism to try and derail the independence movement. So not only am I more objective in this than a lot of the people that are criticising me, but actually when I criticise the Scottish Government, it goes further than when they do as a result of that. So just don't get sidetracked by these diversions. See, when somebody's saying, all right, but what about this, or but what about that, what that reveals is that they have no argument. What that reveals is their contempt for the rules. What that reveals is just a general nihilism that's crept into politics, which is about making sure that your faction comes out looking nice and clean, and the other faction comes out looking this, that and the next thing. The bottom line is, the rules are not fairly applied. This is the whole basis that is supposed to, from which we're supposed to derive a sense of integrity within our system, a rules-based system. So when you can have politicians just referring themselves to the rules while other people can be made homeless, or other people can be deported to dangerous countries where their lives are threatened, then we can't talk about this system being anything other than corrupt. And the fact that Boris Johnson, a UN climate conference, has to use his platform representing Britain on a global stage to deny accusations of corruption in this country's institutions is a massive red flag. People need to get a grip, and people need to get raging. But I need to go because I need to get back to work. See you later.